It's all the same thing in life. When we get out of self, when we lose the self, what's called the ego, again, God gave us this ability to think on a higher level. But it's called in our book here, self-will run riot. Anytime I'm miserable, anytime I'm in my addiction, it's my self-will coming back. Because what happens is, look, in our addiction to food, again, we have different compulsions related to the food. And I want to emphasize that, but it's all the same thing. It's the self-centered fear. Fear is an evil and corroding thread throughout our lives. It talks about it in a big book. It's all, if you look at page 65, we have the columns there. Everything in brackets to the right is fear. Was it our pocketbooks, our self-esteem, all of these things that were threatened? Again, I talk about the word self-pity, self-centeredness on page 62 it talks about. Getting out of self, losing the self. The way to do that is through this grace. Again, meditation and prayer, Eastern Western philosophies. Meditation to me and being in the now or the present is as good as far as it goes. But that faith, when we have that faith, which, that God consciousness, a lot of people come in the meeting and says, well, they think of some type of acknowledgement of what God is or this higher consciousness. They have a real difficulty with this part of the program. But we were created, the source and all true bliss and happiness is within us. That's where it is. We were created, just like our bodies physically, we were created to be happy, joyous, and free. Again, I use an example of a puppy dog, doesn't have that higher intellect like we have. And also when we were little children, we would run around, be happy being in the present and enjoying life. Until we started to think, until our parents, or when we went to school, the authority figures said, hey, look, this is the way you're going to be happy. You be more successful, you get better grades, you enjoy these pleasurable things on the outside, you'll be happy. Hey, food is one of them. People say they don't have faith. We have faith all the time. What do we have faith in? What the corporations tell us. We all fed into it, right? All fed into it. We believe that. That's our faith, that this food on TV, they show us. They say, hey, look, on the internet, wherever it is, and the signs on the highway, they're saying you're going to be happy and joyful if you have this food. They even have music in the background. And they feed it to our kids too, all this nonsense. So we have faith, but we get that in this program. We get that revolutionary change. Again, we can't do it. Our best thinking God. Doing it is the ego. It's the self. I know how to do this. I'm going to control my food, my diet. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to control. Look, I don't want to say, certain types of diet plans. I don't want to go totally that way, but I could say this much. Whenever I try to control something, it doesn't work. I need that revolutionary perception change that step 12 says, that spiritual awakening. Of course, the control brings me in self-recrimination, being upset of what I did yesterday, day before, the past. I always say I'm always planning the past and regretting the future. You ever hear that? That's really interesting, right? You ever planning, regretting the future and planning the past? So it's really, it's something that we have a way out, though. We have a solution. It talks about, and this is really nails it down here. And here's an example. Oh, by the way, I read from that for today, but also in Voices Recovery, it says here, I'll just read the last part of it. It talks about, my higher power created me with all that I need. With my higher power, I will learn to access the power within me. Nobody can teach you something you already don't know. Again, you could ask 10 people how to diet. You could go to these billion-dollar industries, these diet programs, they fail all the time. Because they're trying to, through control, sending you smaller morsels of food with all the same poison in them, all of that same nonsense. It's that transformation, being spiritual awakening, wanting God's gift to this world. Again, I will bring up the water, and I'm bringing up the God's gift. This is what we should have faith in. But we believe the synthetic stuff, all based on all that poison they put in the foods to get us more addictive. It's like, would you listen to the crack or cocaine dealer on the corner? Would you go get your philosophy of what you should do with your life? But we do it on TV. We do it through, not with the food, with the medications they advertise, everything. The other way didn't work. I controlled it. I was on a very strict, it's called the Gray Sheet Diet of Overeaters Anonymous, and I was on it for a year. But that day came. But you want to know something? I was also miserable that whole year. You're going to be so miserable that at a certain point it's not going to be that important in your life, so you can go back to your addiction. Now I have a perception change, okay? And look, I'm not saying I'm perfect at all, but when I do go back and I feel the obsession, or if I do go out of line, okay, then I have this program and these steps. Look, thoughts are just thoughts. When we have this God consciousness, whether it's resentful, anger, fear, gluttonous thoughts, jealousy, envy. When I realize the truth from the false, the truth will set you free. I may feel resentful towards somebody or be upset or angry, but I just say to myself, and 50% of it goes right away, just it's not true. You know, I said a guy at a meeting gets up and he said, I love this. He said, look, I wake up in the morning, my first thought, he says, that's not true. And then he says, when I have my second thought, that's not true either. We have to realize we're coming from, what does step 2 say? Going right back to the steps. It said we had to be restored to sanity. We were insanely indoctrinated by our parents, by society. And then but the point is the problem is always us. I always say that. If you have a problem today, you're the problem. Because on page 544, it talks about that. We made that decision. We made that decision that listening to the corporations, that food was going to be our solution, our answer to life. We brainwashed ourselves into thinking that. So the problem has to do with us in our thinking. The spiritual awakening, one of my spiritual awakenings, or the spiritual awakening, was when I realized where the problem was. Before, I thought it was everything and everybody else outside of me. Right? The problem isn't my perception. When your perception changes, 95% of your problems get resolved. It's your perception of them. Look, the way you know this, 10 people could be in the same situation and all 10 will have a different opinion because it's their perception. But when I get centered, and that's all it is. Look, I went to a meeting. Everybody go around the room once, and I was in this meeting, and there was a nun there. And everybody would talk about their problems, and this one nun, when you would come to her, she would say, look, just sit. She goes, nothing matters. It's the truth. When we get centered and we realize the joy and happiness is here and we stop looking on the outside, then we have that complete change in perception. The perception. It's all perception. Even our own death we can accept. Towards the food is perception. We have this perception towards the food and resisting and controlling, whether we're overeating or undereating, whatever we're doing, whether we're obsessing about people, resentment, anger, fear. The real truth is, look, here's the thing. We don't have to try anymore. The truth will set you free. Look, the thing is, the truth is that all of these things and illusions of the mind, on page 62, it talks about delusions, 100 things that we think about, 98% of them aren't true. Hey, I love a phrase too, worrying works because 98% of things I worry about never happen. The reason that diets fail 95% of the time is because we're coming from the self. The self created the problem. It's like saying putting the wolf in charge of the hen house, right? Would you put yourself in charge of trying to recover? How can you do it? The ego and the self is what got you there. The more you try to do it, the more you try to get people to like you. I can't get people to like me, but I can be a likable person. The point being that when we try to do things, we can't. You ever try to hit a golf ball? We could even use sports analogy. If you try to figure out how to do the swing or whatever it is, whatever you're doing, you can't do it because it's the mind is like a miraculous thing. If you get centered and you're in the zone, as it's called, with sports or any activity like that, but it relates to our interaction with people. When we get with somebody, they try to push our buttons and get us upset. We get into resentment or anger or fear. We shut down God's gift to us. It's called the ego. The ego steer you wrong all the time. So in our relationship to our food and our addiction, right? So the answer is step 3, having had that spiritual awakening.